Okay, so what do we do? What do we do, Anthony? From from the context we're in so far, with all these negative. That's why we skipped the conversation. Well, the answer is what we do is admit. We're forced to admit to work with what's forced to claim practical. In relationship, to remember this is about morality and forsaken standards and how actively. And so we need proper facts treatments, only treatments of facts that are true always. Marbury Physicist Madison is my. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a police form. I'm the English major who reveals something. Who's going to show you something about a better way to understand English. English is the nature of correlation. To teach about correlation itself, not just the correlative conjunction. It's about to teach about the nature of the correlative conjunction to understand it. Otherwise, we've only inherited, even our experts, with roles obfuscating, which been taught to be obfuscated, trained to be taught that way, imperfect, but it's a perfect. Each letter spells out something and it means something. It's not just a. That's what. That's what. Okay, we'll get to the religious parts more, but the solution, for example, is with art. Community that communicates not only for our value, owning it, but as a method, not only for that owning it, but as one that's engaging with the world, not only as the way it wants engaged, with our hands folded, crossed, no answers, in relation their relationship, reaction natures to terrors, again, in relationship to their treatments of morality. For example, with bombs at its back and what they claim stability. These are facts treatments with complex litigation contexts tied to narratives only let realized incomplete and worse than that. In other words, with American history summary convictions keeping common public opinions only let realized and incapable of the nature of the fights at complex litigation in relationship to bombs because of the relationship of the nature of business in relationship to the nature of morality convictions with morality on all sides. And it's easy to point in relationship to terror and not understand. Like, we have terrorists right in our street, mass impositions on women in every urban city in this country. There's failed education, and it teaches because it teaches as its law was only let realized to us because of uncharged natures of organized crime since founding, and even left unexplained because everyone's left as ours, not by accident. And so our litigation natures are only let to realize and see a sophistication over us that is ours too, but differentially. So they're being hurt by the same things to all areas, keeping everybody divided with what's tied to systemic evidence fabrication methods and needs. Again, in relationship to contexts where we don't really have free speech because we're forced to share policing and agreements and natures of morality that are incapable of it. And that to defend that nature, you're defending a nature of police forced over our own that we see and we work with, and we know that we might or might not know the names of. No, the nature of our police, and each nation was forced not only to share, but breached and terrorized, but not from one source, but from the only source that only let these nations of this nature of humanity realized. So it needs fake sides. It needs trouble. It needs fake peace positions. Fake guys with that and hurt with courts throughout the world. One way reports. This is what was set up with America before that. In other words, with witch trials and stuff like that. That wasn't because for hate the way it's only let known now. This is the hate the way it's only let known now is per a method that was with that. In other words, it was a method uniting indifferences to linguistic theater forced with treatments of morality. Now, for example, with prejudice, if we replace the word prejudice with indifference or with evidence fabrication, that those are more complete truths. Because what is actively exploiting poverty, that's why we lost the war on everything. That's why war loses. That's why we lost the war on poverty. Because what actively exploits our forsaken treatments of morality is invested to treatments of logic, to defend treatments of logic to all areas. And everyone was invested to the phenomenon of not only shared means to get away with doing that, but an invested means persuading people to do that, but methods to the maintenance of that, but breaching methods. But we still have the shared predatory litigation nature lies in delusions, forced unchecked, and no one able to complain about it outside of courts. That force lies over truths and delusions over truths and sequence shifting of facts. And even if it's not consciously, that's what kept poverty. In other words, people not understanding the words to teach the law, only realize, taught, incomplete. For example, in relationship to the Civil War, relationship to terror groups, treatments of them. So because everyone was Oz, they say, well, that's complex litigation, that's criminal enterprises. Agencies deal with that. And then the internation ones, and they have the interstate ones. They have whatever they have. They're all connected because this is connected to the natures of crime that were never charged in relationship to slavery, in relationship to countless predicate acts. I'm not even a lawyer. In other words, if we don't explain and understand the not only the nature of an organized crime, how it causes crime progressions, criminal insidiousness natures, and and predicate act criminals and associate criminals that are maintaining the method of getting away with what do they do? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a police form. I'm not a criminal. But obviously, they're negative value nature progressions, especially internation organized crimes. In other words, criminal enterprises. So what do? They have to have their lies, whatever exploitation they're going to be doing. They're keep removing their negative value nature, humanity, and group. So negative value nature in relationship to the nature of the way the mechanics, the only nature that is unchanging positive is a demonstration to the correlation nature of perception to be able to discern between not good and bad, but positive and negative. What is positive all day ways and what is not, as science. Because science doesn't add lies and delusions, but we have science's name only let realized, shared to a guises, only let realized, needing to lie, only let realized, invested to that, not just invested to that, but with methods anticipating and knowing that's going to be happening before we were even a nation. In other words, we have systematic indifferences, hurt conviction natures, with facts treatments, and in relationship to all that's really tied to our prisons and to our criminal justice system, in relationship from campuses, from when we're the youngest until we're all campuses when we're old elderly homes, in relationship to methods between this, staying us divided, hurt evidence fabrication nature justifications, leaving negative value nature progressions blamed on lies and delusions in anticipated ways. Everyone has tool laws breaching nations, every nation, especially regarding our own, regarding this. And in other words, we we have sophisticated police, and trained there's a trained awe and glorification of that in relationship to its contrast to the rest of us. Let me see, but in other words, they're exploiting what everyone is made to do. Why we're a species together, be able to correlate. So because our top natures in relationship to these treatments of facts and blind faith in business and blind faith in experts, we're perpetually in their hands. In other words, that blind faith, Phil, has them perpetually, which in their hands. In other words, only let realized needing to tell lies in relationship to all areas by the time they get there. Otherwise, they don't get there. And there were recorded proofs of this. So we have basic laws that aren't let because of the relationship of all the police forms that we have, because they blame it on like the FBI director says. One of the other ones said they have the right to lie. See, this is in relationship to their narratives, all the crazy fights they have with facts treatments at complex litigation levels, in relationship to sanctions conversations, in relationship to huge amounts of money, in relationship to these statutes. Statutes of what? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a police form. I'm not a criminal. Statutes, in other words, this is how I understand it, and this is what we know between what we know and no we don't know. It's a nature connected to the criminal enterprise. In other words, the RICO statute, Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act, RICO, that is like a modern version. It was from it transitioned from Organized Crime Control Act of 1960 something. It was a OCCA, ACA, I think. But for example, in 2006, there was an attorney Chevrolet. He had been warned by Judge Nations or by Judge Winters not to defend himself if that ever came up, that court context. What he did in that court context, in relationship to one of his co-defendants, was a guy who had a daughter in my grade. It had roles with other men, like a pension thief and stuff like that, who had other drug dealing roles through people with hate group connections and drug connections in my grade. And then they have 10 faces. In other words, they went out of their way. They had to make people make sequential confessions to me when I was a kid. For example, this is not anything personal. I want to talk about why we lost the war on poverty. So we have to use facts. So we're going to use facts between the suburbs. I'm not going to go peer into into poverty and not look at the suburbs. So I'm going to use everything I know about life. And what's going to happen was what I'm trying to say, because I noticed just by talking people that you never had anything to do with and that went out of their way to make confessions about their involvements or just demonstrating their involvements with related evidence fabrications causes for their drugs roles, and they're being directed to sequence theater in relationship to systematic evidence fabrication and witness fabrication problems. In relationship, again, this is why the conversation it has to keep us from being separated from what we've stayed separated to, which is our top litigation nature's roles with colonization, for example. This is why one of the reasons we're still why like that today is why we've had failed people fail to explain American Revolution, In other words, to explain America what was already entrenched here and what the agenda of our founders were, and what political theater was forced on them with terror and how, linguistic wise, and in relationship to what was only let be realized as predatory litigation nature offensively. In other words, that's why there was a civil war, because that was already entrenched here. In other words, free speech was to be able to explain this, not force it, claim physics, or the person claim nuts. That's what made slavery, where the regular people want a voice to explain the terror of the law, but it won't let them. And not only will not let them, it was cultivating the Native American tribes, cultivating everybody to fax treatments, to linguistic fights and terrors and needs and retreat nature reactions and exploitations that nobody understands, because it's an evidence fabrication method in conjunction with and before only let realized trained interscience criminally terror justice natures of conviction, of indifference. So we also to understand the problems we have today with the gun progressions. And we have to, for example, in Connecticut, we can understand there are recorded proofs. They not only don't take and required information because of the nature of the exploitations of our low police, entitled to them through the exploitations of our top police, and then the conjunctions of it with everyone all to that, because it's not by a coincidence that we always have internation terror groups with threats on our leaders to all areas needing to keep state stewardships from being breached in relationship to things and postures forced as retreat nature reactions that leave forsaken reality and finite, like poverty. This is what is actively the problem with poverty. So it's making me have to say all these things just to clear away. That's what we have to do. Whatever is not unchanging, positive, or true, it has indifference to it, and not by accident. It was put there. This is an evidence fabrication method, a breaching method that was founded before semi-ancient and modern nations. So then even kings and queens and pharaohs, even they couldn't understand. That's where religious messengers came for. Thank God. That's why we say thank God for Allah. One reason is because it saved English. It saved English. Algebra. How? Because the human education, geopolitical education, was criminally re-engineered. But it's only what's inherent to this now. One way that they can handle better than us, and one way that we can hear better to them for a reason. But this is also for an ulterior reason, per the method of this evidence fabrication method, which is arranged to exploit correlation. That's why we have not had addressed, forced, glorified summary convictions of American history that desecrate the lessons that need to be taught in the actual proper treatments of morality with language when speaking about the founding. In other words, it being required to be attached to the name James Madison. And in conjunction with George Washington, but with James Madison first. And this is because this is where the plan is, and this is where the counter terror, which was multi-front and which was multi-science. So everybody was only realized to a sophistication natures, measured, beaten, and worked and indifferent. And that indifference is what kept the war on poverty lost. And that indifference is with a linguistic method that knew it would keep wars on poverty lost. When we look at Haiti, every nation is looking at their four shared policing nature agreements. Their four shared predatory litigation nature being the only realized legal nature with voice. Real unchanging law is not let voice. This is what religions are about. They're saying our natures of nations are with physical lies and delusions, and with roles, with evidence fabrication methods through human nature, through criminal re-engineering of human education. This is said through implication. And you put it in the time period. See, we have obfuscate. The science is obfuscating themselves to fit with a logic that forces blind faith in experts, not in real truth, not in real positive. That fake guises, justifications, relationship to tactically ulterior from natural value nature systems. Ulterior from natural with no criminal persuasions. In other words, this is why criminal persuasions are what make wrongdoers and make predicate act criminals, and associate criminals who have to hide the organization of a method. In other words, the members who are behind the acts for it, for the criminal enterprise. And now what we're talking about with the religion is an archetype of criminal enterprise. Now this is one, in other words, with human education. Criminally re-engineer human education, ancient revelations, in other words. You're criminally re-engineering ancient revelations because you're going to criminally re-engineer human nature and then have forced glorifications of names like education, physical lies and delusions. Education is just a surface value. Understanding education is just what happens with process when you're following the rules. Everybody understands. All we have to do is understand how to continue to correlate. But see, we're telling people to correlate from grave to birth in relationship to lies and delusions being forced. The righteous to express a sound, not to free speech, not for that sound, and not for the free speech tried to have, not to be lied about, which is actively, we have nations that are only capable of being offensive, predatory litigation natures. This is why we have their roles. In other words, legal natures failed our courts I'm saying this is where forgiveness comes in. The forgiveness is trying to say everyone's hurt, but from different angle, different natures of to all areas, wherever you go. But the reason we need forgiveness is because it comes from the sciences. And they don't understand it either because they were just taking the ulterior from natural value nature system. So, but it's within linguistic tricks and indifferences where a lot of people get away with a lot of lies using the same methods to get away with it because of the shared indifferences, because of exploited effects relationship to that, and not by accident. That's why we have laws. When people have threats against them, you're supposed to respond to them. The police aren't supposed to say "aha" and make threats just to get you to react and then put you in trouble. That's what we have that. But the motivations for it are much deeper. And see, this is tied to natures of police with recorded proofs that there's self-defense natures of treatments of facts that are incapable of systemic evidence fabrication only realized. See, then it's with legal natures of agencies also with recorded involvements. And this all connected with individual acts of them and their family members tied to uncharged 9/11 witness fabrication, pretending witnesses in the fake conversations about it at all. That weren't at all. And like this Leahy family, I don't know them at all. I had no conversations with them, never mentioned my father to them. They also have related, the guys with recorded and related sex offender and child abuse crimes tied to them, and untimely death confessions tied to EMS confessions, and their roles with related evidence fabrications, sending people to the, they just write whatever the police tell them to write. The police switching names too involved one of the police, and they even forged pretend to be doctors. That's why we have all these, and then they have fire department people involved and like that. And I don't know any of these people. They just got involved because of the way they wove them into needs to tell lies through time, as a reaction nature, as to understand what's being exploited actively, that's causing the hurt progressions with the guns and with these areas where we lost in poverty, is how we lost, and what's not only actively invested to exploit that loss, but how insidiously, per the way we were only realized to losses that every nation fell to, in other words, and shares per influences with the sciences, and with our top legal natures, and with our regular police natures, but not with that alone, and with the branches, not with that alone. In other words, not just with money. That's where everyone says, oh, it's money. Those methods to all areas. People aren't just stupid. It's methods online. When they have people come, when someone's just they're talking about serious things, people make opinions and start claiming that people, they start telling the same kind of lies about people with an agenda. You see the nature, and then you look at their profile, and they have a lot of medical people, like the psychology people, hurt conviction natures. This is they have systemic roles with the war on drugs. They were the whole time with their patients, and with exploitations of all ages of innocence. These sick people have been with sick stuff through time, and Weathersfield too, even back through with serial killers through time, till modern one. In relationship, I had a couple interactions with one that were recorded in relationship to this, in relationship to related ulterior related confessions, not connected to the serial killer, but connected to the building in front of it, and connected to the court police with related evidence fabrication. In other words, they have roles needs to commit murder for what they've been involved with, intercity and through time, in relationship to related recorded but uncharged 9/11 crimes, and the repeating theme of them attaching me to fake narratives about my father and related threats against kids and stuff like that. They even made threats saying they were with the court police online, ERICKNERR. He was posting fake legal cases with other people tied to this. In other words, kids that went out of their way, only know them for a handful of times. I know Joe Aiello, not even a handful of times. Every single time he's with confessions, sick things. I never had anything to do with that person, and they always went on his way to I had a haircut from his father before, big deal. I didn't even know till he was older that was his father who he was, and that's disgusting. It's all disgusting. See, then they play the rumor games like little girls. You know what I'm saying? Then they want to play the main with the sides, and they want to pretend that they're men by getting the groups involved with nonsense, because everyone respects position as told, not by accident, be that being exploited. Per recorded proofs too, with their roles with related drugs and exploitations of all ages of innocence, actively. Like Lisa Ling, this is their proofs that there were litigation natures, legal natures involved with that case, with lies and delusions, justifying their morality, their right to be paid. In other words, in relationship to their roles with her story, saying what goes and what. That's just how things are. In other words, that's why we lost the war on poverty, because we stayed breached top down through the sciences. So what we have to do is be able to actively reveal the truths that are true only always. So what I was true always is that they threatened me first, online even, and before that, online too. Before I went to the school and was arrested by an East Hartford cop on the New Britain campus, and then with the 3-4 other police reports with different narratives, all admitted with evidence fabrications. They also put me in a fake hospital. They said I was in. I was never in. Also, I think it was Detective Sabuda. Never had a conversation like my life. He walked up to us and had to finally hand the final police report in the court. I think that was him. I don't even know if it was him, because I don't know these people. And he said something about he used to work in Hartford as a detective or something like that. And I looked online. It was the only name I saw like that was some guy involved with weightlifting. Maybe it was a kid. I don't know. They're involved with, this group is already involved with like steroids, all kinds of drugs, all kinds of like identity stuff and stuff. All that connected to the campuses. Maybe it's connected. They implied it's connected to the people connected to detectives in my town with confessions related not the body dumpings and behind the building with the serial killer that they made me have a conversation with after I tried to report related stuff there. In other words, they've been threatening me even like that, even by forcing me into the place, because that's the place connected to the guy who was sharing a girlfriend with there was like a girl from DCF, and he had a father. One of her boyfriends had a father who was a policing of the prisons, and there was stuff like that involved because they had them involved in related evidence fabrications, and with the police and narratives with that tied to related child abuse roles with her, and with a guy tied to her, and people tied to them, and evidence fabrications. In other words, they're using these people for evidence fabrications with things that have nothing to do with them. People that have nothing to do with DCF and all these stuff. They have these nature. That's why everyone's like service people. They're being led by predatory litigation natures top down. Our agencies, they fail. Every nation, not because we're forced to share logic that sharing policing that never let go of its original terror methods, which were by what? A method of indifference. So if you replace the word prejudice with indifference, for example, watch how it holds up more true, because they're also pretending to go after prejudice as a method of obfuscating the time, wasting the time, forcing time only let the sciences, forcing sensibilities to only entertain lies and delusions with our real impositions, including with the time, what we have to say and face. In other words, I waste this whole time. I want to talk about your game. Can't even talk about a game because there's too many impositions to put a free business. In other words, a business of a nature that's going to evolve of a nature and stay this nature, only evolving. That's one way to do it is to have it. Part of it has to be owned by the land first, itself. So because then we're watching it evolve. You know what I'm saying? We have to know our nations are broke. Look at Haiti. It's not one nation's fault, but they're all together. So at least if we can admit that it's not us, that would also help us out with the arguments and the nature of them at complex litigation tables. Because then we can demonstrate, well, look, we're admitting this whole this whole thing with wars at its back business, sharing policing, the nature of human standards, the nature of human morality, the nature of the retreats in relationship to all these terrors that are making us skip all the finite truths, the nature of us being incapable of dealing with the exploitations of that. That's really what's tied, not by accident, to blind faith and expert leading. That's what really is bad. Expert leading, we must understand. One team, we lead and train. It's trial tribes. Why? In sequence. Try. Religion train. We need to try. It's trial tribes. Sequence first. There is no way that the Mashantucket, Pequot, how could they have survived in the New England winter intense? And how could they have not been forced to tear a negotiation with police too, with these forced terror agreements and terror theater? Theater has destroyed, not by accident. Even that science with CCSU, their proofs, is used for related evidence fabrication roles they're actively hiding. In other words, you tell these campuses that if someone wants to report recorded things, you don't hide it, you don't lie about it. But they don't do it because of their roles with other police forms juxtaposed with these campuses and with the professors, even with family members of courts criminally involved, with acts. So that's why we have to talk about facts. But we're not being leveled to talk about facts because top down, those guys are in the background waiting to use courts predatory to block people like me who have the unfortunate obligation to address predatory interbranch actors together in the background. That's why they can't put anything in writing. And that's why what they did put in writing, they faked and put it in the databases, and then they acted on it. So they don't show writing, they pretend writing, and they just throw you in jail. And they admitted to it first. They admitted to roles with the threats from since before that too, not just the ones tied to the kids in my family, and other families in the area, and other exploited people by all the lie progressions attached to all these police forms, having had grown up needing to exploit. Need to hide lie progressions in relationship to their roles with systemic evidence fabrications. In other words, and then things come back, and then they have to tell more lies. Then they realize they trapped themselves. Like the DeMaine brothers. The DeMaine brothers, the Hartford police family, involved with this when they were kids. People involved with selling drugs and related court corruption connections and related criminal prison families, conversations, confessions, and roles and natures and methods with an evidence fabrication method using campuses for the maintenance of the lie progressions needed by adults. In other words, these are being used to cover up what colonization's evil methods knew would need to perpetually be covered up. That's why we have summary convictions of American history, for example, attached to the blind glorification of the term education. In other words, we need to understand the method to think is with 3 blocks, 3 blocks, more. In other words, a process. In other words, we're going to learn how to correlate unchanging positive as the law. I'm not a lawyer, not a police form, not a criminal. God help us. Because we have such indifference with morality stayed this way. And just be blind, and not by accident. All we have to do is admit we're broke. In other words, let's use Haiti as a chalkboard. That's disgusting. Little kids Little kid, if they didn't have terror laws in them, little kids could have built better homes than that. Fuck, excuse my language. Oh my God, that you call. See, we have offensive, predatory litigation natures, but not only how, and not only why, but what's with that, unseen.